Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to do a Bible lesson, and the book of the Bible that we are focusing on this week is the book of Matthew. So we have finished the Old Testament. The Old Testament was God's story. It told us about God's creation, his people, and his plan. We must remember that in the Old Testament, it was God's plan for people to live in perfect friendship with him. Adam and Eve ruined that plan by sinning. This meant that God needed to figure out a new plan to restore his friendship with us. The Old Testament tells us about God's new plan. God was always faithful to his plan, even when his people were not. The end of the Old Testament was prophetic. This means that prophets came and told God's people about God's new plan. God's new plan was all about Jesus. We celebrated Jesus coming into the world at Christmas. The New Testament begins with the incredible story of Jesus' birth. The first 4 books of the New Testament are called the Gospels. A gospel is a good story or a story that tells good news. The first book of the New Testament was written by a man named Matthew. He was a tax collector, but when he met Jesus, he left his job and began working with Jesus to tell people the good news about God's new plan. God's new plan was all about Jesus. Matthew wrote all about Jesus' birth, life, and death. In the next weeks, we will see that the writers of the Gospels were all witnesses to the life and death of Jesus. They were 4 different people: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They were all friends with Jesus, saw the same things, and wrote about them. There are many people who do not believe that the stories in the Bible are true. The Gospels are important because they show us how 4 different men experienced the same things and knew and loved the same person, Jesus Christ. Matthew tells us that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, that he was baptized, that he loved and served many people, and that later he was crucified on a cross. Matthew also tells us that Jesus was put in a tomb, that he stayed there for 3 days, and then he came back to life. When Jesus died on the cross and came back to life, God's plan was complete. Jesus paid the price for our sins. Now we are able to be in perfect friendship with God again. Okay, so that is all for our Bible story about Matthew today. I hope that you do the attached prayer activities, and I will see you next time. Bye.